how do you approach, Formula One's such a complicated sport. We just spoke about the factory, all these brilliant minds that go into putting these cars together and designing them. How do you approach the task of filtering that down for an audience that's watching the race for the first time and refining a sport that is so complicated to make it still approachable to first-time viewers?
Yeah, I think that's the thing we always need to remember, that they need to always they always need to be viewable for someone who's never seen the sport before. Like, they need to have it so that someone who's never watched can watch the full race and has fully understood what's going on, rather than being a bit confusing or trying to establish who is what driver. But obviously us hardcore F1 fans can look at stuff like AWS, or even when you've got the onboards on, it has like the live tracker name above the car in front. We can look at that and we can joke about it, being like, oh, it looks a bit like F1 game, or like, well, that rating they've given makes no sense to us. It's a little bit like what we have with Drive to Survive. Like, hardcore fans won't really like Drive to Survive because we know a lot of it is fabricated. But they always need to apply to a new viewer base and to try and bring new viewers into it. So when you have something as ridiculous as, say, like a AWS, like pit lane predictor, or like overtaking predictor, whatever it is, we can look at that and be like, oh, we don't really want to know, because like we kind of want to work it out for ourselves. But at the same time, they do need to apply it to someone who's never watched it before, so they can understand, be like, oh, I can now understand why there's tension coming on. And so I think it is a bit of a balancing act. I would say this season they have like massively reduced the amount of AWS graphics they're showing. And some of the stuff they are showing is basically, like corner speeds, and then also like the overtaking sort of like predictor, where it's just using actual stats rather than using like algorithms or anything to like determine a driver's rating. But then when obviously we can always mock like the previous stuff they always had of like, a driver's rating, or like the car's like performance compared to everyone else. And we can look at that being like, well, that's all up for speculation, because no matter what, analytics you put into it, it's all up for speculation. It's sort of comparing Michael Schumacher to like Lewis Hamilton of who's the greatest of all time. There's arguments from both sides, but there will never be a right or wrong answer, because it's apples and oranges. It's two different things. And when you're comparing stuff like power rankings or drivability or focus or experience, it's a bit like, well, it's all up for interpretation really, because whatever argument you can put into it, it can't be a definitive this is the answer. So I think like the broadcasters actually done a really good job in terms of like constantly updating what they're providing, listening to fan feedback of what they like and what they don't like, even in terms of like onboard angles. That's why we're starting to see less of like the front wing angle, or the offset T is more like making it more easily viewable for everybody, just so then we can get the best experience seeing the sport we love.
Yeah, and it really seems like it has to be viewed as a success story with Formula One. How it is growing. The evidence suggests that people viewing it for the first time will return. Then they, start to engage on social media. They'll follow a team. They'll, pick up on the Twitter inside jokes, and then they'll follow a fan who's in the replies. And the kind of pathway for a fan to go transfer from being a new fan who is kind of reading these graphics, then you kind of almost go on this journey where you start to learn everything. And Formula One's one of those things where a deep dive into the history books can be so rewarding. You learn about, even stories back, races like you covered in your videos, races from the 70s, what Formula One was like back then, and how everything that's gone into it has kind of evolved.